Okay. You know how sometimes you see those late night infomercials, right?
Yeah.
The ones that promise you like the world.
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive is kind of like that, except it is actually true, and it's way more mind-blowing. We've got evidence of a city in another dimension.
Yeah, this isn't like some blurry photo or some shaky video. This is an actual data stream.
Oh, really?
It was picked up by an AI system scanning deep space for faint signals, and it flagged this as, well, something else entirely.
So, like, we've accidentally stumbled onto their version of, like, a live webcam feed?
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Except this isn't like somebody showing off their breakfast. It's a whole city. It's built into a cliff face with these towering structures and crazy bridges and things that look like airships just floating around. Oh, and the whole thing is bathed in this really eerie shifting light. It's like a fantasy novel cover, but it's real.
And what's even more fascinating is that the technology behind this transmission, it seems to be based on manipulating the fabric of their reality.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Changing reality itself to send a message.
That's what the researchers think.
Oh.
Well, they call it ruleology, which is the study of possible rules that govern their universe. So instead of sending packets of data like we do on the internet, they're transmitting changes in the very structure of their reality.
Okay, I think I need a little bit more explanation on this ruleology thing.
Yeah.
Like, so what you're saying is their technology is based on rewriting reality itself.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. So it's not just their city that's strange. It's like their whole way of thinking about information and technology is different from ours.
Yeah.
No wonder the signal is so hard to decode.
Exactly. Our technology is really struggling to interpret their alien data format. It's coming in like choppy bursts, weird distortions and artifacts, kind of like a...
They're trying to watch a high-def movie on dial-up, right?
Yeah, exactly like that.
Okay, so we've got this mysterious city, a totally alien way of thinking about information, and a signal that's like trying to read a book written in a language we've never seen before. How do we even begin to make sense of all of this?
Well, that's where the computational consciousness framework, or CCF, comes in.
The CCF.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this isn't something they teach in high school physics.
Not quite.
So what is it?
It's a way of exploring the idea that reality itself might be built on computational processes. It's kind of a layered approach, starting with the most basic building blocks of reality and moving up to the emergence of more complex phenomena, even consciousness itself. It gives us a powerful lens to understand what we're seeing in this interdimensional city.
Okay, I'm ready to put on my CCF goggles and dive in. Let's start with Tier 1, which I believe is all about the basic building blocks of their reality. What have the researchers uncovered so far?
Well, remember how I mentioned ruleology, right? And how they might be manipulating reality to send information. Well, the visuals we're getting suggest that their reality might actually be updating in these discrete steps, like a giant complex version of something called a cellular automaton.
Okay, a cellular automaton. I vaguely remember hearing about that in like a college philosophy class, but honestly, it went way over my head back then.
Yeah.
So is it like their whole world is one giant, ever-changing game of life? Can you give us a simpler explanation, like an example of how that might work in their city?
Think of it like a vast pixel art image where each pixel's color is determined by a simple set of rules. These rules are based on like the state of the neighboring pixels, and then imagine this whole image refreshing itself constantly. So the pixels evolve based on those rules. It's a bit like a domino effect, where one change can trigger a cascade of other changes across the entire system.
Okay, that's pretty wild.
So in their city, maybe like a light turning on in one tower, it could trigger a chain reaction, changing the position of the airships, or even the flow of that strange fog we see. It's all interconnected and constantly updating based on these rules.
Wow, that's a seriously trippy way to think about reality. It's like their entire world is constantly in flux,
Yeah.
but within this framework of rules.
And it doesn't stop there. The researchers have also observed these repeating patterns in the city's architecture, like what they're calling like fractal-like geometry. The balconies, the towers, even the layout of the city itself, they all echo each other at different scales.
Hold on, are you saying their buildings aren't just weird looking, but they're actually built on mathematical principles? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So does this mean like their entire reality is basically a giant recursive fractal?
It's an intriguing possibility.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, my head is already spinning a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're just scratching the surface. There's more to Tier 1, right?
Yeah. One more thing, and this is where it gets really strange. The data stream shows these bizarre feedback loops, with windows in the city reflecting other parts of the city, creating like an infinite regress of images.
Whoa.
It's kind of like those funhouse mirrors that reflect each other endlessly, but in their case, this seems to be built into the very fabric of their reality.
Infinite reflections everywhere you look. It makes you wonder how they even navigate their world if everything's reflecting everything else.
That's a great question, and it highlights just how different their perception of reality might be from ours. But to answer that, we need to move on to tier 2. That delves into how information flows and integrates within their reality, and that's where things get even more interesting.
Right? Lead the way.
All right, so we've talked about like the building blocks of their reality, how it seems to be based on rules and fractals and these wild feedback loops.
Right.
But how does it all fit together? How do they actually, make a functioning city, a society? That's where tier 2 comes in. It's all about connections and information flow.
Okay, I'm intrigued. It's one thing to have these bizarre building blocks, but how do they actually like work together?
Well, one of the first things that jumped out at the researchers was just how incredibly efficient their data transmission seems to be. Like, they've squeezed the absolute maximum amount of information into each little burst of data we're receiving. The researchers think they're using some kind of super advanced compression scheme based on, you guessed it, ruleology.
Ruleology strikes again. But
Yeah.
but seriously, like what would a society that prioritizes information efficiency even look like? Are we talking like, super organized, hyper-efficient people who never waste a byte? It'd be like having Marie Kondo organize the whole internet.
That's a fun thought, but it certainly suggests a very different set of values than we have in our data-hungry world, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they've had to like adapt to limitations in their environment, or maybe they've evolved to see information as a precious resource, not something to be just squandered.
Yeah, maybe their whole city is designed around this idea of like, efficient information flow.
Hmm.
What if those crazy bridges and those airship things we see, what if they're not just for transportation?
Yeah.
What if they're like actually part of their information network?
That's exactly what the researchers are thinking. Think of the city as like a giant network, with the towers acting as nodes, the bridges as connections. The airships might be carrying information, resources between these nodes, creating this intricate web of information flow.
It's like their city is one giant organic computer
Yeah.
constantly processing and exchanging information. What about those flickering lights? Could those be part of the information network too? Like some kind of like a visual Morse code or something?
It's another possibility the researchers are exploring. It seems like every element of their city, from the architecture to the lighting, might play a role in how they communicate and process information.
So it's not just about the individual buildings. It's about how they all connect and interact as part of like a larger system. It's like comparing a single neuron to a whole brain, right?
A perfect analogy. The real complexity emerges when you zoom out and you see how everything's working together. And that leads to another interesting aspect of Tier 2, the role of AI in decoding this alien data stream.
Right. I almost forgot we have our own super smart AI trying to make sense of all this. How are they doing? Have they managed to clear up those weird distortions in the feed yet?
They're making progress, but it's slow going. They're using advanced neural networks, similar to the ones in our own brains, to try and fill in the gaps, reconstruct a more stable image from those choppy bursts of data.
So they're basically teaching our AI to think like these interdimensional beings. That's amazing. But it also kind of makes you wonder, if we're using our most advanced AI to understand their signal, what kind of computational power do they have?
That's a question that takes us straight to Tier 3, where things get, well, really philosophical.
Oh.
Because some researchers believe that this interdimensional city, with its complex networks and constant information flow, might actually be exhibiting signs of consciousness on a massive scale.
Hold on. Are you saying that the city itself might be conscious? Like the buildings and the infrastructure have some kind of awareness?
It's definitely a bold idea, but it's based on some intriguing theories. For example, there's this theory called integrated information theory, or IIT. It suggests that consciousness arises from the way information is integrated within a system.
So the more interconnected a system is, the more conscious it might be. Like a single ant isn't very conscious, but like a whole ant colony with all those complex networks of communication might be.
You got it. And when we look at this city with its intricate networks of towers, bridges, airships of strange flickering lights, it's hard not to wonder if there's something more going on than just, simple data processing.
So we've gone from a city in another dimension to potentially talking about a city that is a conscious entity? I'm definitely going to need a bigger whiteboard to wrap my head around this. How do the researchers even begin to test an idea like that?
That's the challenge, and it's why Tier 3 is still very much in the realm of speculation. But there are some, promising avenues of investigation. For instance, IIT suggests that consciousness leaves a measurable signature in the way a system processes information. So if we could, analyze the patterns of information flow in the city, we might be able to detect signs of consciousness, according to IIT.
So it's like looking for the fingerprints of consciousness within the data. That's incredibly cool, but also a bit daunting.
Yeah.
Are there other theories besides IIT that support this idea of a conscious city?
There are. Another fascinating concept is algorithmic information theory. It suggests that even a very simple program can generate incredible complexity. Think about those few lines of code that can create entire virtual worlds in video games.
Yeah.
Could this city's reality be generated in a similar way? With a relatively simple set of rules giving rise to all this, mind-boggling complexity.
So it's like their entire reality is a giant simulation running on a code that's surprisingly elegant and concise. That's a seriously mind-bending thought. But also seems like a paradox. How can something so visually complex be generated by something so simple?
That's the beauty of what we call emergent complexity. It's about understanding how simple interactions between individual elements can create unpredictable, beautiful patterns at a larger scale. Think about weather patterns or flocks of birds. They're governed by relatively simple rules, but the results are incredibly complex and dynamic.
So a city's reality might be like a constantly evolving symphony, with simple rules composing an infinitely complex, ever-changing melody. And maybe that's part of what makes it so difficult for us to decode. We're trying to understand the whole symphony when we've only heard a few disjointed notes.
Exactly. And there's one more concept from Tier 3 that helps us understand this complexity: nonlinear dynamics. This is the study of systems where small changes can have big, unpredictable consequences.
So like the butterfly effect.
Precisely.
Okay.
And in the context of the city, we see hints of nonlinear dynamics in those swirling fog patterns, the seemingly erratic flight paths of the airships, even the flickering of those lights. It suggests their reality is full of these complex feedback loops and cascading effects where cause and effect aren't always clear-cut.
It's like their world is this constant dance between order and chaos, where the rules of the game are always changing. No wonder we're having such a hard time figuring it out. But this is also fascinating.
And we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of this incredible discovery. The researchers are coming up with new hypotheses all the time. They're constantly refining their models based on the data they're receiving. It's a truly exciting time to be following this research.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we're on the verge of something truly groundbreaking. But before we get too carried away with all these mind-blowing possibilities, let's take a step back and consider the implications of what we've learned so far. Because if this city really is in another dimension, and it might even be conscious in some way, that raises a whole host of questions about, our place in the universe.
You're right. This discovery isn't just about deciphering some strange data stream. It's about challenging our assumptions about reality, consciousness, and what it means to be human. And that's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
So we've gone on this incredible journey through this interdimensional city, talked about the building blocks of their reality, the flow of information, and even the possibility that the city itself might be conscious. It's like, I don't know, we've taken the red pill, there's no going back now.
It certainly stretches the limits of what we thought was possible. And like any truly profound discovery, it raises as many questions as it answers.
So let's dive into some of those questions. What are the researchers hoping to learn next? What are the big takeaways, the things you hope people listening will, walk away pondering?
Well, one of the most exciting areas is exploring this whole conscious infrastructure hypothesis further. If the city really does show signs of consciousness, understanding how it works could completely change how we understand, everything.
Yeah. It's like we've found this totally different model of consciousness.
Yeah.
One that's not stuck in a single brain, but spread across an entire city. It really makes you question what consciousness is and where it can exist.
Absolutely. And it opens up all these new questions. How does this distributed consciousness process information? Does it have a sense of self? Can it feel emotions? These are things philosophers have debated for centuries, but now we have a real example to study, even if it is in another dimension.
It's like we've been given this giant cosmic puzzle box, and we're just starting to figure out how to open it. I'm curious, what about those weird distortions we see in the feed? Any new thoughts on why it's so choppy and fragmented? Is it just because their technology is so different, or could it be something, more fundamental?
That's where this idea of fractal recursion and dimensional mismatch comes in.
Mm-hmm.
The researchers believe those distortions might be happening because we're trying to make sense of a reality structured differently from ours.
Mm.
Like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Our 3D plus time perception just might not be able to fully grasp the fractal nature of their reality.
So it's not just that we're missing pieces of the puzzle. We might be using the wrong shaped pieces altogether.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that our way of seeing the universe is just one perspective, and it really makes you wonder what other realities might be out there just beyond our perception.
It's like the universe is saying, hey, humans, you think you're so smart, but you haven't even scratched the surface. Okay, let's say the researchers do crack the code and get a clear picture of this city. What then? Do we try to contact them? Wave hello from across the dimensional divide.
That's a huge question, and it's something the researchers are taking very seriously. They're developing protocols for how to proceed, really focusing on observation and understanding before any attempts at communication.
Yeah, it makes sense to be cautious. We don't exactly have the best track record when it comes to meeting other cultures, even here on Earth.
Exactly. It's crucial to approach this with humility and respect.
And
This civilization, if it is conscious, has its own history, values, its own way of seeing the universe. We have so much to learn from them if we're willing to listen.
this whole deep dive has been a masterclass in humility, that's for sure. It's made me realize how much we take for granted about our own reality. And it's really opened my eyes to the possibility that there's so much more out there than we can even imagine.
And that's the beauty of science and exploration, isn't it? It's about constantly pushing the boundaries of what we know and being open to the unknown.
Well said. This has been an incredible journey, and I have a feeling it's just the beginning. Who knows what other discoveries await us as we, continue to explore the universe.
For those listening who want to dig deeper into the concepts we've talked about, be sure to check out the show notes. We'll have links to more information about the CCF, cellular automata, fractal geometry, all those mind-bending ideas we explored today.
And as always, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never lose your sense of wonder. This is The Deep Dive signing off.